Alright, welcome to Reese's Side Quest. Today we are going to be looking at my list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and this list is composed of both a bucket list that I would like to go to. So I've looked through the entire list of about 1,500 sites and selected about 100 or so that I would really love to go to in my lifetime, and then there's about 25 or so. I think that number might have gone up. About 25 or so that I have actually been to in real life, I suppose, or at least seen in some capacity. So, to just click through here to show you how this Google Doc works, there are essentially different links throughout it. So you can see all of these are clickable links to the United Nations website where they have the profile of each site, which contains the info that was proposed by that individual country for the process of the site becoming recognized by UNESCO, and then also a lot of good photography that shows the site not necessarily just in an aesthetic way, but it shows the physical evidence that makes it meet the criteria that requires it to be a UNESCO World Heritage Site. That includes relevance to culture, significance to the natural environment, and various, interpretations upon those two, essentially. So, all the countries are organized in alphabetical for the most part. So, coming up on the first one that I have actually been to is in Barbados, historic Bridgetown and its garrison. Let's hope this actually works. Yes, historic Bridgetown and its garrison in Barbados. And so this is recognized as a UNESCO site because it's an interesting mashup of cultures that basically appears in a few colonial examples throughout the world, where there's this mashup of European and local architecture, or there's, from what I can see in this example, more so just British colonial architecture that's preserved in a certain way where it wasn't in mainland Britain. I went here when I was a young child. I was probably 8, maybe 7, so I don't really remember it that much, but I would love to go back. Barbados seems like a very lovely place. So moving on to the next one. In China, I went to 5 or 6 different UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The first being the Great Wall, which is located just outside of Beijing, about an hour or a little more cab ride outside of Beijing. So, definitely a must-see if you're in that area. It's a pretty surprisingly accessible, at least for the first section of it. It's pretty easy to get up to. There's ramps, there's ways to walk up to this main wall part. Once you start going further, it becomes a little more challenging. There's very steep steps. As you can see here, the incline becomes quite steep as well. Some of my friends were like sliding down the railings and stuff. It was that steep. Next up, the imperial palaces of the Ming and Qing dynasties in Beijing. And this is, that's the formal name. A lot of times the UNESCO site is going to have the formal name of a site, not what we know it as. And we know this place is the Forbidden City, especially in the West. I'm not sure if they actually call it the Forbidden City in China or what the specific name of it is. I think it might be called the Imperial Palace or something among that. So this was truly truly a spectacular place to see. It's really unlike anything else because it's, compared to other royal palaces I've seen, like Buckingham, the royal palaces in Nepal, and the kind of revivals of royal palaces in Western capitals, you see the scale of this place is just not really imaginable. You see this top photo here that I'm selecting shows just the main square of it. This is not even the entire thing, and this is a panorama taken on an iPhone, and it doesn't even really capture the entire size of the place. It's truly massive. You can see it on a map of Beijing. I'll see if there's an aerial view on the website here. You see, here's the gallery of photos. So you see both this extremely intricate architecture everywhere you look. Every detail, every single statue, every stone has a certain level of detail to it. And so there's no shortage of things to look at when you're wandering through these grounds. I think you really could spend a full day, maybe a full week in this place if you wanted to. We made it about a half day. One thing that is very notable about this place that you might not expect necessarily is the Imperial Garden Complex that's kind of in the middle of it here. I'll see if I can find a photo of it on here. Yes, right. This here, as well as this, I believe, is in the gardens. Where's a good photo of it, though? I'm not really seeing anything great. See, this is why people don't know about it. People are taking good photos of the architecture, but not the gardens. Here's one. So, in the interior of one of the courtyards, there's this very unique garden space where there's these rock sculptures that, I mean, you can see how large these are compared to people. I'm not even sure what on earth they're made out of. And then there's these trees that have been there since, old Imperial China for several hundred years. So, very unique site. It's really like nothing else, certainly deserves the title. The next place we went to, also in Beijing, that's number 3 in one city. I think Beijing and Rome are the 2 cities in the world with the most sites. Although Rome's is all considered one, like, mashed up site, essentially. It's all just like Rome and the Vatican and ancient Rome. It's like all one. We'll get to that. So the Summer Palace is the next one. This is just a nice little vacation home for the emperor, and it was revamped and greatly expanded in the 1800s under the Dowager Empress. If you know about that history any, I'm not going to get into it on this video. That's a whole rabbit hole. But you can see, yeah, it was first built in 1750, destroyed, and then it was rebuilt in the late 1800s. So it's truly massive, though. And the one thing that makes people, or that makes it a little bit unique, even in terms of these vacation palaces that you see around the world, is this structure called the Long Corridor. And it's kind of hard to tell exactly how long it is, but I mean, this is the same city as the Great Wall, so if they're calling something long, it is insanely long. And I think this is over a kilometer of covered walkways that circle the gardens of this summer palace so that the royals would have been able to walk around and enjoy the gardens, rain, shine, or snow, and just but now it's available to the public as a museum. All of these sites in China were like less than $10 US, maybe $20 US to get in there, even for foreigners. So, absolutely worth it in my opinion. I mean, I was just in Las Vegas and seeing that it costs $40 to get into the replica of King Tut's tomb, when going to the actual Great Wall costs like $10. Kind of crazy. So the next one, the Grand Canal. This one is also in Beijing, and this one's recognized as, I have too many tabs. It's recognized as a really immense canal structure, and you can see this map here where it doesn't just circle around Beijing in this kind of iconic location that I have photographed as well, where there's the Summer Palace is right on the shore of it. There's many historic stone bridges and so on, but in reality, this is an immense construction project that stretches the entire northeast of China, really. It's, over 2,000 kilometers of waterways. So this was constructed between the 7th century and the 13th century, so this is very much within, the period of medieval China, and I'm not exactly sure the volume of earth that was displaced. I've seen that statistic somewhere, and it's really hard to even comprehend how many millions of cubic meters that they moved of earth, but we'll go ahead and move on. I think we're only on like the 5th one. So the Temple of Heaven. I think this is the last one that's actually in Beijing proper, or in the Beijing area, and that is the Temple of Heaven. And this is a super, super iconic building in China. It's featured on a lot of their coins, including the silver panda coin, their silver bullion. So it's very iconic and one of the most distinct pieces of Chinese architecture in the world, in my opinion. So getting closer to it, you see not only the iconic pagoda shape, the stepped shape, but also the immense amount of structure of detail work. Here's the roof tiles. Each one is glazed pottery. This is not like a thatched roof or something, as it looks like from a distance, or it's meant to imitate these like thatched bamboo roofs, but they're all glazed tiles. I mean, it's really hard to even understand how much work went into creating a structure like this. There's the interior. Many of the interiors of temple structures had this kind of painting decoration, and I believe it's wood carving essentially, hanging from the ceiling. So, moving on to Xi'an, which is another city in China that is in, I suppose, more so central China. It's west of Beijing, so about 1,000 to 1,200 miles west of Beijing. And this was a famous city along the Silk Road, which is essentially, the main trade route between China and Europe for hundreds to thousands of years. So there was a lot of cultural significance to this city, as well as during a certain time period, it was the capital of the Empire of China. So the emperor himself did have his tomb. This is Emperor Qin Shi Huang, who I believe is also the same guy that built the Great Wall. He just loved big monuments. I don't know if there's any other... Come on. I don't know if there's any other single individual that's responsible for the construction of 2 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, but especially 2 in 2 different... Oh, wait, actually... Victor Horta, I think, and then there's some 20th century architects, but they're not recognized as separate sites. They're all under the umbrella of that architect's name. So this might be the only person. Got to give credit to the folks who actually carved these people out, though. So yeah, Lishan Mountain is not to be confused with Leshan Mountain, where the Leshan giant Buddha is at. It's northeast of Xi'an, so we took a cab out there. I mean, it's these country drives, you really lose track of time because it's just so scenic. You don't really... The passage of time is not necessarily your concern because you have so much scenery that you're looking at, and it's such an unfamiliar environment. One of my favorite things about this site was it gives you the opportunity both to see the overall mausoleum encased in this, it looks like a hangar, honestly. They built this massive, massive structure to protect it from the elements, so you really can see them all lined up, which, largely when they were found, they were all kind of laying down and scattered, so they have been re-stood up for the most part. And you can also see them up close, where some of the better restored ones are displayed in individual cases, where you can get a look at the details, where each individual person has different, slightly different details to their outfit, face, etc. As apparently they were based on real models or something like that. The exterior here, you can see it's just really out in a rural area. I mean, this was discovered by, I believe, just a random Chinese farmer who was digging in his field and hit the head of one of these with his farming implement and was like, what the heck is this? So, moving on, the larger, like I said, some UNESCO sites have more of an umbrella categorization where it's one site, but it really includes multiple sites. And this next one is certainly one of those because it actually includes multiple sites across multiple cities. And that is of the Silk Roads network site, essentially. And that site includes historical buildings from the time period of the Silk Road along that pathway in China and Eastern Europe. And I believe some countries in West Asia also have certain Silk Road spots as well. So this site includes the major historical buildings of Xi'an, such as the Wild Goose Pagoda here at the top. This is, I think, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6-story or a 7-story, pagoda. And this was built in, I believe it was built in about 500 AD, and it was rebuilt in 700 CE, 704. So I mean, this is an immensely tall structure to have been built that long ago. The engineering that's required to build tall buildings is just not, it's not easy to do. And so it's amazing that this thing is still standing. Just, that's all I'm going to say. And next you have the Xi'an Drum Tower, where they would periodically beat drums to signal certain things throughout the city. This was built in 1380. So, I mean, you look at these two buildings, and I mean, they both look quite old, but it is pretty interesting that one was built, 600 to 700 years before the other. Here's the Wild Goose Pagoda at night with some of the Xi'an street lights on. And then here's just a list of some of the other sites within China that I would like to go to in terms of UNESCO sites and honorable mention. Some of these honorable mentions I have either just, I think it should be a UNESCO World Heritage Site, or it is on the tentative list, which means it's in the process of being decided as to whether or not it's going to be one. So for England, in the city of London, I was able to see two of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites that they had to offer there. I was only there for 2 days as a stopover to go to Ireland. So there was the Palace of Westminster and Westminster Abbey, which truly is one of the most architecturally intricate buildings that I've ever seen. Like, this is the same building that, it's part of the complex that Big Ben and so on are part of, that the British Parliament currently occupies. However, there's a section of it that's referred to as the Westminster Abbey, which is an old Church of England church that's been around since, the medieval times. And so there's several famous figures from history, as well as British royals, famous figures in their church, and so on, that are buried right beneath this location. So let me see if I can find a photo here, because I don't have any. I was only 12 when I was there, of the interior of, this is the exterior of Westminster Abbey. Let me see if I can find a good photo of the interior. Here we go. I mean, this is just, it's really unbelievable. This is a side, nave of it. This is not even the main section, but yeah, I'm not really certain why that's not coming up, the interior of it, but if you have the chance to look that up, I would definitely recommend it. The Tower of London is the next spot, and that is another place where, just because of the amount of history there is to learn, you could spend an entire day there, because it's one of those buildings where it really tells the story of an entire country. And because there was just so much activity that happened around the Tower of London being used as a castle, being used as a fort, being used as a prison, and then being used as a high-profile individual prison, there were quite a lot of very fascinating things that happened there, such as the death of Anne Boleyn, among other things. The British Crown jewels are also housed there, so there's a museum section to be able to see those, which have, some of the most famous and large gemstones in the world, frankly. So anyone who's interested in mineralogy or anything like that, it's worth it just to observe some of these extremely rare, valuable stones that they got from their empire business. The original tower, the central one, the White Tower, has been standing since 1066, literally the founding of the Norman power of England, which is kind of the modern, essentially, era of England, what you would consider the modern lineage of the royals. So it's very, very fascinating that there is this one building that's been standing for all that time. And if you want, there's a YouTube video out there that shows the modifications of it over time. I would really recommend that because it shows what on this is original, what has been changed, and what it looked like at different times in history. Super, super interesting. Going down, like I have so many things in India that I want to go to, but I just haven't planned a trip yet. I mean, dang, it's really not, I don't know. It's really hard to plan trips these days, like, just in general. Alright, so moving on to Italy. Rome, like I said, the historic center of Rome as a UNESCO site is one of those that encompasses multiple sites. It's not just one thing, it's not just one building. So, I have a handful of pictures here that kind of give you the idea of how wide that variety is in terms of what, historic center of Rome is. So you have these, you have buildings really ranging from ancient Rome, such as the Colosseum, all the way through around the 1700s, I believe, where you have some of these historically preserved buildings. And then between that, you also have, I hope you can see my mouse cursor, some of these structures that were built after the Roman Empire in the early and late medieval periods, just really stacked on top of the older structures, which is so fascinating to see. I mean, that's really one of my favorite things. And you just don't see that in the United States incredibly often. So there's also a good amount of medieval and Renaissance era Catholic churches outside of the Vatican, of course. There are several scattered throughout the city that provide nice sight lines down the avenues. They really carefully, I mean, I don't know if they did, but it seems like they really carefully constructed the sight lines of Rome. So there's always some sort of monument you're looking at down the street. It's pretty cool. The last aspect of that, I mean, it includes the Colosseum, it includes the Pantheon, the Forum. It includes the tombs of all of the emperors that are known in Rome, and it also includes the Vatican, which is, obviously not technically Rome. It's not technically Italy. It's an entirely separate country. However, it is included in the UNESCO site for Rome, so it doesn't get its own site. The St. Peter's Cathedral was built in 1615, which honestly I had thought it was later. This thing is truly insanely massive in person. You can get a little bit of a sense of the scale from the people here and how small they are. Let me see if I can zoom that in a little bit more. I mean, it's a little bit of an optical illusion because you see these columns and you assume that they're a normal size of a column, but these small ones in the front are 80 feet tall. The front facade of St. Peter's is, over 100 feet tall. It's truly immense, and when you're standing in St. Peter's Square, you do feel really small. It's very interesting. I did not see the Pope at that time, unfortunately. So for Naples, or Napoli, the historic center, just the downtown area, the buildings of, the traditional Italian style buildings are preserved in this site. I didn't get a ton of photos there because during most of my time in Naples, I was traveling out of the city to these other sites. So the next one includes the archaeological sites of Pompeii, Herculaneum, and Torre Annunziata, which I was able to go to Pompeii and Herculaneum. So you can see here, this is Herculaneum. Honestly, I really liked Pompeii. You can see some of the stuff in Pompeii, and you can find a million videos on Pompeii, but I really liked the experience in Herculaneum because, first off, there was about a quarter of the amount of people that there were at Pompeii. Secondly, I think there was certain aspects of it that genuinely were better preserved, and I'm not certain if that's because a lot of the better preserved aspects of Pompeii have been literally moved into museums, but Herculaneum, you can see a lot of these really intact stucco, like art, essentially. What is that called? A fresco. A lot of frescoes and from ancient Rome that are perfectly preserved. You know, crisp, realistic details of people and animals and stuff, like right on the wall where you can walk up and look at it. It's really amazing, and it's provided a lot more of an immersive experience, in my opinion, where you could get a little bit of silence and kind of see these things than in Pompeii when you have like 200 tourists running around. There's a person with a megaphone talking, and it's just craziness. Pompeii is super beautiful, like you have to go, but go to Herculaneum too. It's worth it. It's worth the time. So, this one I just caught a glimpse of it. I didn't visit Mount Etna. I didn't go up on there. It would have been really cool, and I did actually see it smoking and releasing a little bit of magma when I was flying over it. So that was pretty cool. But here's a view of it from Tropea, from mainland Italy. It's actually a volcano on the island of Sicily, right at the kind of northern end of that island. So from mainland Italy, you can see it. It is the tallest volcano in Europe, I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Yeah, it says that there's basically been continuous eruptions in Mount Etna for the past 2,700 years, at least, and possibly for the past 500,000 years, but, you know, this is as far as we've been actually recording it, which is pretty wild. I don't know how many other volcanoes have been continuously erupting for that long outside of, like, volcanic islands like Hawaii, so... Here's a view of it from the train car. We really just basically bypassed bypassed Mount Etna and went straight to, or the city that it's near is called Tropea. You can kind of see it here. We basically bypassed Tropea on the train, just went to the train station and booked it out and went straight down to Palermo, which is actually the architecture there is considered another UNESCO World Heritage Site. So this is really one of my favorites in terms of the architectural sites, and that's because it's such a unique, like, it's just unique. You really don't see anything like this, I believe, really anywhere else. I mean, this kind of Arab-Norman combination, you really see, I think, some areas of France, some areas of Spain, and then in Sicily, and that's really the only places. And it's just where basically during this medieval period there was influence and, you know, people coming over as well from the Ottoman Empire, where there was kind of back and forth territorial claims as to whether the Ottomans controlled Sicily or Spain and so on. And there was architectural influence. So you have this mashup of these really wonderful looking buildings where they contain elements of this Middle Eastern architecture as well as a European style church and palace architecture. It's really just fascinating. I was walking around just looking at these buildings for an entire day. Iran. Wow. Yeah, I've never visited Iran, but I was able to fly over it once on my way to Nepal. So the one UNESCO World Heritage Site in Iran that I have laid eyes on, this is my own photo, is Mount Damavand, and that is a volcano. It's the tallest volcano in Asia and the tallest mountain in all of Iran. You can see it really looks pretty unusual. I didn't even know what I was taking a photo of at the time. I was like, that's beautiful. I mean, there's this just perfectly shaped mountain sticking up about twice the height of the surrounding mountains. It might be a volcano, it might be something, and sure enough, it's this really very old, I believe 2 to 3 million year old volcano that formed here among this mountain range, the Alborz. Just in the distance here is the Caspian Sea. You can't really see it through the fog, but this is basically a coastline over here. So, in Ireland, the one place that I was able to visit in terms of UNESCO World Heritage Sites was Skellig Michael, and that is the famous beehive houses that they filmed the Star Wars movie at. And These are really incredible to see. I was also pretty young when I was here, but I have a very crisp memory of it because they're just so distinct. And on the tour of the island, you are able to actually go inside of one of them, which is pretty cool. I mean, they're small and kind of hard to imagine actually living in, but they are cozy. I mean, it's really about like a stone tent or a large or like a small shed kind of size thing. So you imagine you're spending most of your time outside. It's not really that bad. And I mean, they clearly stood the test of time. These were built in I believe they were built in relatively ancient times. Let me see the date. I don't want to get this wrong. They don't even know. Somewhere between 950 and 1050. So it was originally built as a monastery. So these were meant to be relatively humble and simple homes for monks. And the island was also, you can see you have to take a boat to get there. Obviously it's an island, but back in the day in 950, you really couldn't get out there. So it was pretty remote and a nice place for these monks to relax and do their thing. So in Mexico, this is another site that includes multiple locations, so 244 islands. But the one that I was able to visit, or the series that I was able to visit, was the one outside of Cabo San Lucas on the Baja. And it's really a shock, or a very striking. Oh yeah, here you can see the map of how extensive this site is. It goes all the way up and down the Baja California, as well as some sites over here on the Yucatan. So you have these very immense rock structures, but the one that really stands out to me is the one that's in Cabo. Of course, yeah, you have these California sea lions all over the place, following your boats around and so on. Where is the... Oh, there's no way. We're going to have to look this up because... You have to see it. This is like the main aspect of it. This thing, yes. This is definitely worth taking a boat out and seeing it if you're in Cabo. It's one of those one-of-a-kind sights in nature. It's just breathtaking. Here's my photo of it on a good old iPhone, but I kind of forgot I had this. I don't know why I searched it up. But once you go out on the boat, you see this rocky outcropping. You also can go up on these hillsides outside the city. This is, Cabo San Lucas proper here, the resorts on the coast, and then the rest of the city kind of sprawling throughout the mountainsides. But this area over on the coast is a park, and you can hike up on the mountain and get a really nice view of the cove. So in Nepal, there's 4 named UNESCO sites in Nepal, and I was able to go to 3 out of the 4, so not too bad. So Kathmandu Valley is the one that really does include multiple sites, however, so it includes 6, I believe. So this first couple of photos just show you the general vibe of the valley itself, the actual valley. So you see these mountains along the side, and then the city of Kathmandu, which has a population of a couple million, is situated right down in here. So unfortunately, there is a good bit of smog that accumulates in here due to no emissions regulations and the mountain valley effect. Here's it on a little bit of a more clear day. You can really see there's not a lot of high rises. I mean, I'm on a maybe 4 or 5 story building, and that's about as tall as it gets, other than a few exceptions. So that is nice. You really can see the mountains from your balcony. So once you get to the historical sites in Kathmandu Valley, you're seeing a lot of Hindu and Buddhist temples. So throughout Kathmandu, And you can check out my video that I made going more into depth into my trip here. But you're going to see a number, hundreds and hundreds of these pagoda structures built in almost every city square throughout the entire, throughout all of the old areas of the city, essentially. And you'll see this very distinct red brick and dark wood combination where there is intricate carvings in the wood, and that is the distinctly Newar architecture style that was developed by people in the Kathmandu area, 500 to 600 years ago or so. So this is one of the royal palaces. This is actually the window through which the royals would look down on the rest of the peasants, but now it's just a gift shop. So, here's me in front of one of the royal squares in Kathmandu. This is an extremely interesting piece of art that's in the Kathmandu Durbar Square, the Temple Square, and it's just a ginormous stone statue of the Hindu god Bhairava that they found in a field outside of Kathmandu and just dragged it in because they thought it might be something divine. But essentially it's an extremely ancient stonework that they have no idea when it was made, but it's been put to reuse right in this heart of the city, and it gets repainted every year. They were in the middle of restoring it when I was there. This is Patan Durbar Square, which is another palace square in a completely different area of the city, because there was kind of micro-regional princes competing for influence and clout at the time, so they were all competing with their palaces, whose is bigger, etc. But, it's really nice for the modern tourist because we get a lot of really nice architecture. So this is the Samyak festival, which is a festival that celebrates the Buddha in the context of the Hindu faith. That's the extremely quick way of putting it. But this is a once every few years festival that I was able to witness that they have right in the square in front of these temple structures. So it's really cool to see a historical site, a 500-year-old or a 400-year-old historical site, being used for the religious purposes it was originally built for. That's incredible. This is the interior of the palace. It serves now as a museum, art and culture museum. So the next site under the umbrella of the Kathmandu Valley is the Pashupati Temple, and that is one of the oldest Hindu temple sites in the world, dating back well over 1,000 years. This central building with the gold roof is the original temple, and then you see throughout the years there's been smaller stupas, little offering areas where people would have incense burning, making offerings, saying prayers, and so on. But, non-Hindus are welcome, of course, to respectfully walk through and observe. There's folks selling little knickknacks and so on as well. If you want a souvenir, you can support the people that are praying and the monks and religious folks for, really a very little amount of money if you want to do that. The next one is the Bodha Stupa, which is another extremely iconic Nepali site, and this one is characterized by this large central domed stupa with this tower with a clearly painted face on the front of it, and it's actually an ancient tomb from the 5th century where there was a certain monk who was considered to be an incarnation of the Buddha. He was considered a historical incarnation of the Buddha, and he was buried within this, and then this mound was built up around him, and then throughout the centuries it became more of an architectural piece than a dirt mound, and so now it is what it is today. But you can see the buildings were actually built around the stupa rather than the other way around. Everything is in a circular structure because this was here first rather than the city. This was here before Kathmandu's city even existed, which is incredibly interesting. This itself was a religious pilgrimage site, and then the city developed later. Outside of Kathmandu, you're going to be having two other UNESCO World Heritage Site, designations under that Kathmandu Valley umbrella. And so the first is the Changu Narayan Temple, which is considered the oldest temple in Nepal. And it dates back to, it has certain aspects of it that are from about 500 to 1000 AD. There's this pillar, which is the oldest thing at the site, the oldest artifact, I suppose you could say, for better words, the Mendevan pillar, which was carved by, let me see, Mendevi. What? Yeah, so, whoa, this is my post. That's not helpful. Well, it was basically left by the ruling people of that time to say I was here, and here's a little prayer for you. That's all I was trying to get at. But this place is really nice. It's out in the middle of the woods, and you can really relax and get a nice view of the valley and the mountainsides, but still enjoy some history and some architecture along with it. Nearby is Bhaktapur, which is essentially a region or a sub-town within the Kathmandu municipality, and it is one of the main historical towns along with Lalitpur and Kathmandu itself, but now it's all kind of composed into one thing. And Bhaktapur has a number of these wonderful temples as well, because they had their own regional prince that was trying to outcompete everyone. So this one, in my opinion, what sets it apart from the other two is the sculptures. So you have these numerous sculptures of historical figures, like you can see here at the front is a Malla king. I'm not sure exactly which king, but this is one of the kings that was over this area, along with some of the wildlife that you'd see in Nepal and mythical creatures. These are on the steps of a lot of these temples, and it's really really wonderful to see. It's just an aspect of it that you don't see in the other two squares. The next site, and this is the one that I've spent the longest amount of time at, is Chitwan National Park. And so this is basically at the very southern end of Nepal, and it's on the border between Nepal and India. While you might see these kind of photos, let me go back up, these kind of photos of Nepal and think like, okay, it's kind of more mountainous. But when you, and of course Mount Everest is in Nepal, so the half of the Himalayan range is the northern boundary of Nepal. So obviously there's mountains there. That's kind of the environment that you're thinking of. But when you drive to the very south, you're reaching sea level, like literally sea level. And so you have both the subtropical environment of northern India and the very, very low altitudes and muggy climate of kind of a river basin that forms this perfect jungle environment for wildlife. So I was able to spend 3 months there living and working at the national park. So you're just going to have to check out my other 2 or 3 videos that I made on that, because I do go in a deep dive of what I was able to do. Let's see what kind of photos they have on here. I don't think I've ever looked through the UNESCO website on this because I have so many photos of my own, but wow. There is rhinoceros. I got to work with baby rhinoceros. There's a lot of work elephants just walking around, as well as wild elephants. But yeah, this is kind of the general environment. It's very foggy, lowlands, marshy, kind of a mix between grasslands and woodlands depending on where you are. Lumbini, the last UNESCO World Heritage Site in Nepal that I was able to go to, is the birthplace of the Buddha. And I've also made a full-length video about this one. But this site basically commemorates the actual location where Buddha was born in the historical texts and the legends. And so you have this temple complex, this white building where you can see the actual plate, like the literal spot where he was born and took his first steps, as well as these extremely early Buddhist monastery and stupa structures that were built very, very soon after the life of the Buddha, making them, really some of the earliest Buddhist relics in the world. So in the modern day, this site is basically a pilgrimage site for Buddhists from around the world, and is a place for governments to kind of showcase their appreciation for the Buddhist faith. So a lot of international governments from Korea, the United States, Japan, China, Canada, Austria, France, you name it, has built their own temple, mostly built between, the 1950s when the site was kind of rediscovered and today. And these mimic their traditional temples, which is incredibly cool to see. I was able to stay at the Korean monastery, which is built in the style of a Korean Goomba. And then there's also many other temples built in the architectural styles of their own countries, right basically in a row alongside each other. So you get this wonderful showcase of architecture from around the world, like bam, 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 you're just walking and seeing it all. Russia. I was born there, so I got to see this when I was like a little babby, but I don't really remember it. We drove by this thing in a cab. I hope I'm able to go back one day without being drafted. I don't know. I think that's all. No, United States. Oh my gosh. Smoky Mountains. I like the Smoky Mountains. I think it's really underrated, and because like it seems kind of boring for people in the eastern US, because a lot of times, your kind of random park in your hometown looks like this photo on the right, but Smoky Mountains has a really wonderful, like, it takes that I guess you could call it the Appalachians. Like, it takes that Appalachian experience in terms of wildlife and ramps it up, because you just have a level of remoteness and seclusion. I mean, obviously there's Gatlinburg, that's pretty noisy, but once you get out of there, you're in the park. You can go, you can go hiking, you can go ziplining, and you can stay out there for as long as you want, and basically, really explore. And I saw a bobcat there. I want to go back to go birding is really why I'm interested in this site right now, because it's close to my hometown. So one I'll definitely return to that's like super underrated as a UNESCO site. Redwood National Park, not so underrated, but oh no link. Where does the link? Not so underrated. Huge trees, relatively close to San Francisco, so you can very easily access it from a major city there and from the airport, essentially, if you're wanting to just do kind of UNESCO hopping. Here we go. Yes, this is this thing. A lot of trees, they're huge, it's kind of crazy, and it's really another one of those where you can spend half a day or you can spend a week there, because it's just immense, but also you kind of, if you're not really that much of a nature head, you can kind of see it, move on, go to Sequoia, go to some of the other sites in the area, do whatever you want. Statue of Liberty, I didn't even know this was a UNESCO site, but apparently it is. I've lived in New York for the past like 7 years, so I mean, I just see this thing basically all the time. I've only been out to it once. This is the photo I think I took in 2015 when I was on vacation here with my family before I moved here, and I really haven't even been back there since. I've taken the Staten Island ferry several times, and you get a really cool view of it on that, and there's no reason really to go there unless you want to see the gift shop, I guess. I don't know. I don't even think there's a museum inside of the thing. The Ellis Island is another story. If you want to do the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island loop and do the museums and everything, that's a great day, a great experience. I mean, it's kind of a field trip, but but just the Statue of Liberty, it's not worth your time, in my opinion. Like, going all the way out on the boat, you have to go through basically airport security to get on that boat, and then you go, and then you see it, and you're like, wow, this looks just like it looked from the boat, and then you leave. It's actually kind of harder to see because you have to look up at the sun. And here it is from like where I used to live for college in Brooklyn, so you can see it from really pretty far away. pretty far away. This is like maybe 3 miles away because they really light it up at night. And it's pretty tall. I mean, it's over 100 or 100 feet tall, I think, 110. So the next, the 20th century architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright. That's another that extends across multiple places, multiple states, I believe, maybe multiple countries. The only one I've been to is the Guggenheim, however, which is probably the most iconic other than Falling Water. And when I went, they were literally renovating the place, so there was no art. I don't know why they still charged admission, but it was pretty cool to see it nonetheless because you really got an emphasis on the architecture rather than the art displays. That's all I'm going to say on that. I need to go back when there's actually something in there to look at. Independence Hall in Philly. This is, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site for both the colonial American architecture as well as the cultural significance to the United States. It's where the Declaration of Independence was signed. So I was actually here seeing Pope Francis speak at an event in 2015. So that was kind of random, but I was able to see the building. So pretty cool. Hawaii's volcanoes, I mean, 10 out of 10, no notes. I mean, you just need to go there and see it. It's one of those sites you can spend a day or 100 years because it's pretty much, it's not endless, but it's really immense in terms of, like, you're walking around not only on the side of the volcanoes, but in some of them, such as Kilauea Iki, which is like a side caldera of Kilauea volcano. You can walk actually across, like, the caldera, like the part where the lava originally bubbled up and now it's dried and it's made this flat lava plain, and you can walk across it. And I mean, I was maybe 13 and I was like getting blown down in the wind and scraping my knees on the lava rocks, but I mean, it was cool. Like, it's just such a weird environment. It's like another planet. San Juan, Natural Historic Site. I think this includes both historic downtown San Juan as well as both San Cristobal and El Morro. So I would recommend seeing all of that. It's pretty much an incredibly unique, Spanish colonial site within the United States. There's only a couple of other examples of those in Florida, or in Florida and California. So this is pretty wonderful. I hope to be able to go back to Puerto Rico soon here. The most recent one that I went to here, and that is the last one. Yes. The most recent one that I went to here, I went last week, and I'll be making a video about super soon, is the Grand Canyon National Park. And and the Grand Canyon is essentially, this one actually has a link, wow, is essentially the largest canyon in the world by far. I don't even think it's close necessarily. It cuts about 1,500 meters deep, and it's not only, one thing that I learned actually, it's not just the canyon was carved by a river. There's also was an uplift of these mesas on the side. So you have this combined geological event where you have basically over time there was simultaneously an uplift and this erosion happening. And so it just created the perfect conditions for an insane canyon like this. One of the most interesting things that I saw, though, other than the wildlife, I'm going to get into the details of the birding in my video that I make on it, was these petroglyphs. I didn't see this one actually, but I did see some of elk. And these were made by the ancestral Puebloan people. They're over 1,000 years old, made out of the kind of ink from the red, like iron-rich dirt, clay. So, I mean, just incredibly fascinating that you can see this kind of thing in the United States. And the Grand Canyon, I would certainly give a 10 out of 10. I want to go back and go to the North Rim. We were able to go to the South Rim for 3 days, essentially, 2.5 days, and hike the Bright Angel Trail, which you can see on this, I think. This is just an overlook, but it's where you walk around and then down and down and down and down, and you go all the way to the bottom. So we were able to go all the way to the bottom and back up, and it was a heck of a hike. This is a California condor, which is one of the rarest birds in the world. They also nest at the Grand Canyon, so that was a huge little bonus sighting for me. I was able to see this about 10 years ago from the air, and ever since that I was like captivated by it, and I was like, I have to go at some point. All right, well, thank you for tuning in to my top 25-ish UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And make sure you stay tuned because I'm going to be dropping 2 videos very soon. One's going to be about traveling to the Grand Canyon, like I just mentioned. The other will be about traveling to Las Vegas. So those will both be dropping within the next week. So make sure you stay tuned. Thank you very much.